believe I turn it over to staff to read our item into the record. Is that correct? Thank you.
Okay. Item DCA 201-001 is consideration of amending chapters 51 and 51A of the Dallas Development Code, section 51 4.208, recreation and entertainment uses. Is this the right one? Yes. Section 51A 4.208, recreation uses and related sections, with consideration to be given to defining a use, private game club, and establishing appropriate zoning districts and development standards associated with this use.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Gillis. I'm with Planning and Urban Design. I will be presenting the proposal for you this morning for discussion. I'm going to share my screen. I do have some, hopefully it'll make it a little easier to see some of the text of the proposal. So I wanted to put that up for you all to consider. There we go. So I'm going to go into, there is a piece, a short background that I will go on that leads us to why the proposal is the proposal. I'm going to cover a little bit of state law, just so we're grounded in that as well, and then go through the recommendation. As Ms. May read into the record, this is the proposal. So this does stem from a CPC initiated request to look at a code amendment for this use or for a related use, but this started on it was initiated in June 3rd of 2021. And what they specifically authorized was a public hearing to consider amending Chapter 51A of the Dallas Development Code, with consideration to be given to requiring a specific use permit for commercial amusement inside, limited to a poker room. So I'm going to go through as to why this proposal is adjusted and the purposes for having to adjust this proposal. So this was the initial request put forth to staff for us to look at a code amendment related to this. And so it was really what the code amendment was. It was intended to provide a path to allow private game clubs to operate by specific use permit in a capacity that complies with state law. So we had to figure out something that was going to comply with state law, given the changes that had occurred through the state. And so there were some adjustments that needed to be made in order to comply with state law. So to go a little bit further into that, the specifics of it, so we really were pointed to Chapter 47 of the Penal Code, which is always interesting when we're thinking of zoning code amendments, that goes into this, that keeping a gambling place, that a person commits an offense if he knowingly uses or permits another to use as a gambling place any real estate, building, room, tent, vehicle, boat, or other property whatsoever owned by him or her under his control, or rents or lets any such property with a view or expectation that it be so used. So going back into that, and then where it could be allowed within state law or such types of uses is that you have an affirmative defense to prosecution under this section, that if the gambling occurred in a private place, so that was the key piece for our code amendment, really thinking about it had to be in a private place. It couldn't be in a public place. No person received any economic benefit other than personal winnings. And except for the advantage of skill or luck, the risks of losing and the chances of winning were the same for all participants. So when we developed whatever the code amendment was going to be, we had to make sure that it was going to meet these three in order for it to be allowed under state law. So, and one of the key pieces with going back to when we were thinking about the CPC, original CPC initiation of a code amendment and their request, we had to think about how that interfaced or interacted with this requirement of it being a private place. So we already went through this piece. And so, and again, defining the private place. And this is where I think, and this at a certain point, if the city attorney's office can correct me if I'm wrong, there's some discussion in the proposed code amendment about where this use would not, specifically where it's not permitted, and some of the uses specifically not permitted. So I think it ties in here. So because there are definitions within state law of what a private place means and what is excluded out of that private place. So the proposal is that, so for a private game club, is that the definition of a private game club means a private place that is only open to its members. So again, key membership, that primarily offers competitive gaming facilities, including games of skill, such as axe throwing, darts, or shuffleboard. Any games played with cards, dice balls, or other gambling devices defined in the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 47, are allowed only as an accessory use in accordance with 51A 4.217 of the Dallas Development Code. So this is only allowed as an accessory use. It can't be a main use. It can't be a sole use. It can't be a primary use. And some of the key pieces of this are that it's a private game club and its members. So again, it goes into defining what member means. It's an individual joining the private game club. Membership must be for a minimum of 1 year time period. There was a bit of discussion back and forth of, what the time frame means. Members must meet more than de minimis requirements, eligibility requirements, and memberships must be limited in number and may not be transferable. And membership must be revocable for cause. And all of this really goes into the point of when there would be a permit pulled, and this would be looked at from the building official perspective. And then also the code, the proposed amendment also does recommend these other 3 conditions as well, that all economic benefits other than personal winnings must come from the main use. So again, going back to the economic benefit has to be on the main use, not coming from that other accessory use. Except for the advantage of skill or luck, the risks of losing and the chances of winning any competitive game must be the same for all participants. And a private game club cannot operate in conjunction with certain uses. And that's that list of certain uses that's in the draft code, which largely matches what's in, it's a sort of link to our uses in our code and what the state law lays out. And so the districts where this would be permitted, and again, by SUP as an accessory use, only in CR, community retail, regional retail, commercial service, industrial, central area, mixed use, multiple commercial, and urban corridor districts of Chapter 51A. And then in Chapter 51, the shopping center, general retail, light commercial, heavy commercial, central area, and industrial districts. And then the required off-street parking, it's the same requirements that would be established by the ordinance granting the SUP. So there's no changes there. It would just be fulfilled through the main ordinance. There would not be additional required off-street loading. And then the additional provision to be added is specifically that a private game club must comply with the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 47. So again, tying it back to that to make sure that we're in compliance with any requirements per state code. And that's it. It seems like a big topic, but it's not largely a lot of additional code. So, and I know it's a little bit complex and there's a lot of background that went into it, but I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have the city attorney's office here with us if there are any specific questions. So we'd be happy to help out with that. Thank you.
Ms. May, should we go to speakers?
Okay, let me. Okay, so we're going to our registered speakers first, and today we just have one registered speaker, and then we'll go to people that are here in person. So if Phil Kingston is present, please turn on your on your camera, and begin with your name and your address, and I'll also keep time. Do we have 3 minutes per speaker today, Chair Hassett?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Your house, right? Can you hear me okay?
Just barely, Mr. Kingston.
All right. Try something else.
We've got you on the camera. We're just not hearing you yet.
Can you all hear me now?
Not really. It's very, very, very faint.
Well, I hate to cast any aspersions on the city's IT department, but I don't think the problem's on my end. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Let me ask our panel, our committee
Online.
members if their microphones are all turned off.
We can hear him online.
Yeah.
Another point in my favor, Tip, sorry.
I wonder if we could just turn up the volume. We're going to try to turn up the volume on our end.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Kingston, I think we have our speakers are not on in the room. So maybe we can go to we'll do our speakers that are in person, and then we'll circle back to you while we're trying to get our speakers turned on.
I'll just hang out.
But yes, thank you for your patience. Okay, so we're going to flex for a moment and take speakers here in the room. And so if you could come up and identify yourselves and state your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Yes, there should be a button that says speak or speak.
Now it's turned on. Okay. So my name is Tom Dupre. I'm a resident of 5132 Bell Reef Drive in Dallas, Texas. And though not an attorney myself, over the past 3 years, I've been very actively involved with the city of Dallas in the issue of illegal poker clubs. I've worked with the Dallas Attorney's Office, Collin County District Attorney, the attorney who represents the city of Dallas in current litigation, and other government officials. The Dallas Board of Adjustments, I want to clarify, did not reverse the city's ruling that poker clubs are illegal. Instead, what they said is that because the board is not a court of law, they could not render a legal opinion, and that the club should stay open until a court rules on their legality. In November of 2022, Judge Moye ruled in district court that the clubs were operating illegally, but the clubs were allowed to remain open during the appeals process. The case went before the appellate courts this past December, but a verdict is yet to be rendered. Regardless, many believe it will ultimately be settled in the Texas Supreme Court. What is being proposed here, though, is incredibly reckless. This plan seems to help address the provision of making these clubs private, But this model could be interpreted also as operating an illegal lottery. A lottery is defined as a prize or a thing of value distributed by chance with a significant payment made for the opportunity to win the prize, which could be construed as dues. In other words, a small fee makes it a public place. A large fee possibly makes it a lottery. Both of these are illegal. This land use seems to be a Band-Aid approach to figuring out how to commercialize gaming laws that were designed to protect individuals hosting a friendly game in their private homes. If poker's allowed, why not slots and craps? As long as all proceeds are distributed to the players and not the host, they too would be legal in Dallas under this land use, since the same laws affect all games of chance. But they're not legal. Hosting a poker game for profit is illegal. If you're not getting profit, then why do you do it? So is hosting any other gambling activity. So please take the time for the courts to settle this issue in a sane manner. They have been quite lenient in allowing the clubs to remain open during the process. Since this proposed usage is an ancillary use, the number of tables would need to be limited so there aren't 100 people playing poker and just 5 throwing axes. There must be accountability showing how many game hours or poker hours versus other games. Since no one can receive economic benefit other than the players, there cannot be any tipping or payments to anyone, including the dealers. How will clubs show where the revenue is coming from? This plan only serves to hide the source of revenue. If passed, this classification needs to be distanced from schools, churches, and residential neighborhoods. Membership fees need to be substantial and periodically reviewed. And this land use must comply with, it's my last sentence, can I just finish? The land use must comply with and be carefully vetted to all Texas penal codes and the Constitution. The city cannot afford another half-baked solution to allow illegal gaming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. Okay. No other speakers here in the room. All right, well then we're going to try again on Mr. Kingston. Okay.
Yes, let's try one more time. Well, at least one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay.
We got the speakers on.
All right, I'm Philip Kingston, 5901 Palo Pinto. I'm here to speak as strongly as I can against this proposal. And the reason is not because I don't want poker rooms. I think poker rooms are excellent uses of Dallas real estate. And it was quite a travesty when the city attorney started shutting them down and causing people to lose their jobs. The reason I'm against it is because staff has created an unnecessarily complicated regulatory system for this. We already have a classification called private club that does everything staff is proposing here, except that it allows for normal stuff like serving alcohol and food. They're proposing some kind of poker room world where you can't have food and drink. It doesn't even sound fun. I mean, also they've managed to make sure that you can't have it in conjunction with a short takeoff or landing airport or a railroad station. So that's some valuable work that's been done there. The reason I know that private club allows for the operation of gaming is that that was the classification that the city attorney's office was trying to move the poker rooms to in the period before Chris Queso lost his mind and tried to declare everything illegal. It is not a secret that the pursuit of the poker rooms and trying to get rid of their COs is a significant reason why Mr. Queso was terminated. So I am very unsure why staff continues to mess with this. We know poker rooms are legal under state law because of the operation of poker rooms in Austin and Houston and Dallas until we decided to mess with them. If the host is not taking a rake, that is not profiting from the actual playing of the game, these things are legal. They don't violate the penal code. I don't understand the ruling we have from district court here. It seems to be based on the idea that you could tip the dealer and that that's somehow a pecuniary benefit. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't anticipate that the Fifth Court is going to uphold that decision. The history here is that there was one of these poker rooms proposed for District 11 back in 2014, and the city attorney proposed that it be classified as a commercial amusement indoor. That's the Dave and Buster's classification. It's for games of chance. Poker is a game of skill. The reason they made that decision was not to have the right zoning. It was so that an SUP would be required for poker rooms.
That's time.
Mr. Housewright, may I continue just briefly?
We can give you a minute. Thank you.
I'll wrap up as quickly as I can. So from the very beginning, these things have been tried to be crammed into the wrong use. The other reason I know that a private club can support gaming is because every country club in town has had a poker game for 100 years. So the only thing that staff's crusade against poker rooms has done is limit legal poker to wealthy people in country clubs. My clients let Black people play poker. What a shock. So what I would encourage ZOAC to do is send forward a recommendation that poker rooms be classified under the existing zoning that we already have as private clubs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all our speakers, I believe. Okay, super. I think what I would do is open this up to the committee to ask questions of our speakers, and then following that, we can go to questions for staff. So any questions for either of our speakers this morning? No questions here in the room. Mr. Rubin, Mr. Baring, Mr. Reeves, questions? I see none.
I mean, I have a statement. I mean, that
Okay.
I honestly, until I read our briefing, I had no idea of any of this. As Mr. Kingston said, poker is a skill game, and I always lose my rear end, so I'm not much of a poker player. So all of this, hearing his testimony, hearing the first testimony, reading staff's thing, I don't even know where to begin, other than I need some more digging in background, I think. So I'm just kind of wide-eyed and bushy-tailed at the moment. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Reeves. I'm sure that will serve us well today, so keep it up. Okay, no other questions for?
Yes, sir.
the
Mr.
speakers?
Chair, would it be possible to ask the first gentleman, would you be willing to share your document with the committee? Where you spoke from? You were very specific in detailing.
Sure, you want my, sure.
Please.
I've got an extra copy, be happy to. May I address the element of risk in like 10 seconds here? Would somebody ask me what I feel about the element of risk?
Sure. What did you have something you wanted to tell us?
And I can provide a document on this as well, but back when Governor Abbott was the Attorney General of the state of Texas, somebody wrote him a note trying to get clarification on this particular model. And what Abbott said, and I'll try to quote as closely as I can, is that any element of risk constitutes a risk. So even though a skillful player will earn more money playing poker than a non-skilled player, any amount of risk constitutes gambling. And that was his opinion. And also Jim Maddox, and I can also provide a review that he did on this, kind of echoed the same thing versus the Texas Constitution. So I'll be happy to, if I have a person to forward these documents to, I'd be happy to do it this afternoon.
I might recommend you forward them to Ms. May, and then she could distribute, and so she can give you her card here in a moment. Okay, seeing no other questions for our two speakers, I will then open the committee to questions for staff. Mr. Carden.
Yes, I had a question for both planning staff and perhaps the attorneys. Is it staff's interpretation that this is intended to regulate the use solely for the purpose of complying with state code, or are we looking at this use for both complying with state law as well as from a use standpoint, from how the city sees it?
I think this is I would say both, and to provide for just a larger use as a whole. And then within that, be able to have because I do want to clarify that it would be the large private game club use. And then any games played with cards, dice, balls, or any other gambling device as defined in Chapter 47 of the Penal Code, that is the accessory use within that main use.
Okay, so it essentially is, yes, it's a two-pronged question
Correct.
here.
Two-pronged.
Thanks.
Other questions? Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, just a quick procedural question. Is it correct that the way that ZOAC is constituted, we cannot go into an executive session and get legal advice from the city attorney on this matter?
Bert Vandenberg, City Attorney's Office, absolutely correct, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, so if we needed legal advice would have to come in an executive session if this made it onto the CPC, right?
It is correct that when items go to the City Plan Commission, there is attorney-client privilege between the two, and executive sessions can happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Berry?
I do like Mr. Reeves.
We're not hearing you very well, Mr. Berry.
Oh, let's see. Any better?
There we go. Much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. I was just saying I'm also green on this issue, so I'm listening and learning. I think just to build on Mr. Kingston's testimony, I would just offer the question, was it considered to modify or work within an existing use such as the private club versus creating a new use?
Mr. Vandenberg?
Bert Vandenberg, Assistant City Attorney. I think working with staff, it was considered the private club, if you read the definition, it mostly refers to outside activities, recreation fields, tennis courts. And the country club one actually has a golf course attached. I don't think anybody wants to play this out on the tennis court, any axe throwing, anything like that. So, and also commercial amusement inside was referred to earlier as well. In its definition, it is open to the public, which runs contrary directly to Chapter 47.
And this is a bit tangential, but I believe I've heard recently, did we also create a gaming use, like an esports type use? I'm recalling something about that.
We're working on the answer, Mr. Berry.
Oh, no worries. Thank you.
So the question being, is there a designation that's been contemplated for esports or other activities?
As cool as that sounds, I don't think I've heard of it.
I was recalling something, but I must be mistaken.
I think we would probably call it commercial amusement inside, especially if they're selling tickets to watch or play in the game. The definition of commercial amusement inside is something along the lines of a facility that offers entertainment or games of skill to the public for a fee, I think is what it is.
Okay.
It's probably the closest we have for an esports arena viewing event.
Okay. So in other words, some of our existing language could cover that. Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing, Mr. Barrett, do you have questions?
I do. I wanted to understand staff's goal and the purpose of restricting the cards and other things to an accessory use only, and with a long list of exclusions of what they could be done in conjunction with, what would be left that they could do it.
The reason for an accessory use is to allow, this is a larger use that has a lot of activity. You can do all these things in it, right? But if you wanted to have a gaming component, a gambling component for the definition, played with gambling devices according to the government, penal code, you can't have anybody making money off of it. Therefore, it has to be a small portion of what's happening there. You can't have it be a main use. Main use is all these other things. That's the restriction. The other restriction comes from the definition of private place that Ms. Gillis read or showed you earlier, and it just said all these places can't be done in conjunction with this if you want to have that component. Now, if they wanted to not have those components, they'd probably have a little more freedom. But
so those things are already all controlled by state law, right? It always says it has to be a private place. It has to, nobody can profit off of it. So why are we going through and enumerating all of the things that you can't do if those things are already at the local level, if the state already says you can and can't do these things? Because it doesn't seem crazy to me that you would have food and drink and things that were being done as accessory to play the card game. If we're just going to go out there and play card game, why does that need to be an accessory use defined by us?
Because it's already done by state law, and you just don't want to be able to do it.
All right.
Mr. Carden.
Had a couple more questions here. Could you elaborate a little bit further on the choices of approved uses, in particular, some of these being like community retail, some of the lighter intensity retail and industrial uses, why those were included in terms of appropriate areas for this type of activity?
Because I think when you think of what the main use would be, it's looking at where that main use could be allowed. So that matches up with those zoning districts. And so we're looking at some of the relatively equivalent main uses throughout the city. It's usually in those zoning districts. And so that's the main use. And then obviously there would be the allowance of the accessory uses to go along with it.
Understood. But as I believe we discussed earlier, there's a two-pronged issue, both the state compliance as well as the question of the use in itself. And listening to the audience, it seems like there's some conflicting opinions on the use itself, irregardless of state regulation. Is that something that was taken into consideration in terms of just, positioning for this? Since it already requires an SUP, there's already a higher level of regulatory burden to even have this use.
I think we looked at where, if you were going to do the larger use, where the zoning districts where it would be appropriate to have that larger use.
And then one other question for the city attorney primarily. What happens if the state law changes and then would we end up having regulations that are ultimately more restrictive than state law? So state law says, you can gamble a little more freely, or however they change it. How would that scenario impact this regulation?
Every legislative session, state law changes, and we change our code to comply with state law.
Okay, I see no further questions. I had a couple, if I may. I'm struggling with the accessory use and the main use. The main uses seem to have eliminated so many. What's left? I think Mr. Carden asked the same question. Basically, you seem to have eliminated all the places where I would assume that this accessory use might occur. Just help me understand where it would be allowed if we move forward with this.
I mean, that is the challenge. So again, I think trying to strike the balance of what we have for the state law perspective, what is boxed out from the state law perspective, trying to figure out where it would fit within our code. You know, I think it is a challenge. It is a challenge at this point as to where that would go.
Okay.
I mean, it needs to be within it, you know, it needs to have its private membership piece in it. So it would be a challenge.
Okay. My second question, I think, gets to a little bit of what our first speaker was addressing, but if the main use can only be if this accessory use is accessory to the main use, economic benefits other than personal winnings come from the main use, except for the advantage of skill or luck, the risk of losing, chances of winning must be the same for all participants. If we crafted an ordinance that somehow solved the issues we're trying to solve, there's no way that we on the CPC or really would the city even be able to enforce those things? Is that a state enforcement? You know, if so let's say someone's got an SUP to operate one of these, how do you know that you know, the economic winnings, you know, the winnings are not, you know, whatever.
So from what I understand, a lot of the detail is going to have to be worked out at the building official level when it is pulled for permit and determining how they're going to evaluate compliance with that. It is going to have to be determined at the building official level.
But that's to get a permit and to begin operating. But once it's operating and how do we know these things remain true?
I'm assuming this is going to be like a compliance issue. If there are complaints and there are issues, and then it starts to, you have to start unfolding and looking and investigating the complaints. And certain of these pieces are going to have to be demonstrated if there's a complaint issue that results from.
So it might go to code compliance?
Correct.
Okay, so we would not be sitting around waiting for the state to come enforce it?
No, it would be stemming from code compliance.
I see. Okay. All right, so there would be some ability on the part of the city to.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I was wanting to get at. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Mr. McGregor entered just a few minutes after we began a few minutes after our roll call, a few minutes after we started the meeting. So
That's right.
Thank you for
Sorry,
being
I'm running a little late. I, like some of the other committee members, I'm a little bit I'm looking at something in a very abstract way. I'm trying to figure out how to kind of grasp what's going on here. Can you explain to me, imagine that I'm trying to explain it to my neighbor. So without using technical language, what specifically is this ordinance what type of business is it trying to allow? What does it look like? We keep talking about throwing axes. There are others. What does the business look like? And also, what are we trying to avoid or prevent? What business are we trying to get rid of?
I don't think we're trying to get rid of anything. I think we're just trying to be more clear on what can be done. And I would say, I think since you brought up the axe throwing, that could be main use because it's that. So the definition is a private game club means a private place that is only open to its members that primarily offers competitive gaming facilities, including games of skill such as axe throwing, darts, or shuffleboard. Where the accessory use comes into play is any games played with cards, dice, or balls, or any other gambling device as defined by the Texas Gaming Code. They're allowed as an accessory use. So any of the games played with cards, dice, or balls, it would be used as an accessory use, and then it has to go into all of the other pieces about membership. Economic benefits can only be personal winnings.
So if I may, club right now, I think that Mr. Kingston brought up the country club. If a country club has poker games, they'll have to either stop doing the poker games or stop serving food and alcohol when they do it.
I think they would have to request an accessory use. They would have to have allow an accessory use for that.
Okay, which comes with an SUP.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. There's Mr. Reeves. I see a question.
Yes, a lot of times we'll get reference to what other cities do. So how does Austin, San Antonio, Houston, how do they handle this?
I think there's a difference in all of the different jurisdictions, but we can find that out if you'd like.
I mean, because the reason I'm asking, I mean, I'll show my age here. It was back in the Unicard days. I remember I was in far north Dallas, outside of the city limits, meeting a friend at a bar, and they had a room off to the side where they were playing poker, and they had staff going in there and feeding them food and beer and whatnot, and it seemed very peaceful and just part of the use. And I don't know if my Unicard membership would allow me in there or not, but it was at a retail, strip mall. It was a restaurant. It was a bar restaurant, whatnot. And that would not be allowed in this case if we were to forward this on via staff's recommendation. Is that correct? Not the.
Hang on a minute, Mr. Reeves.
So what I can say to that, so I'm sorry, was there a question at the end specifically? Was it where you're asking about, I know you gave the example, I heard the example part. Was it as in, could that be done here?
Yeah, yes. For example, you have a larger restaurant and you have a room off to the side, and that room is being served by wait staff, food and whatnot. But to get through that door, you're supposed to be that member for a year, and you can go in there and play poker and still have a drink and food and whatnot. Would that be allowed if we followed staff's recommendation?
So what you laid out, sorry, I'm just going through and I'm making sure that I'm clear about the uses. What you laid out, no, as proposed, because it cannot be in conjunction with one of those uses.
Okay. So Mr. Chair, I personally would like to see the matrix, the graph, the side-by-side comparison of what a private use, making these private clubs would allow versus staff's recommendation, as well as some other cities and what they're doing. Because I think if we had that, we could then hear our speakers argue for or against that with kind of that side-by-side comparison, because it does seem like the private club route is a route that I'd like to see it maybe not considered, but I'd like to see the pros and cons of that compared to staff's recommendation.
All right, thanks for those remarks. Mr. McGregor has another question.
I do. Would this ordinance allow the creation of a casino with an SUP?
I'd have to ask one of our other code, I mean, I don't think casinos are allowed. And, oh yeah, good point. Again, going back to being open to the public.
So it could be a casino, but you would
Because
need
if
to
you have
pay
a private membership.
a private
casino,
membership, say $1, you pay a membership of $1 a year. You're a member, and so you can operate a casino.
right, and it falls back to de minimis requirements. So I don't know if $1 a year falls into that, but
Well, whatever the minimum is,
Correct.
but the idea being that, or does it even have to be a dollar membership? You could be a member by filling out a form, I suppose, depends on how the
and that
casino
is what
structures.
that's the piece that gets determined by the building official, what that's going to be. But yes, what
But
you're
yes,
saying-
you could operate a casino then. This would allow it where before you would not be able to operate a casino.
Well, if again, the accessory piece to it, there's that accessory piece to it. So if it is, again, any games played with cards, dice balls, or other gambling device is an accessory use. It has to be accessory to the main use. So I would say that a casino under this
So
could not be.
you could be a hotel and have a casino on the bottom floor, and the main use is a hotel. And I'm asking this question because I think
It could not.
if that's what we're dealing with, it's a much bigger issue than
Yeah, no, and you're right. So, no, according to this proposal, it could not be, because it cannot be in conjunction with lodging or boarding house.
All right, let me keep going with this. Let's say there's a use that's not on the restricted list here. That's the main use, but still the first floor of the building is a casino. That could operate, right?
I don't know if I know, I'm trying to visualize what that example is. I'm not sure what that is.
Let's say it's, is there a stadium on the list? Yeah. Let's say it's a stadium. And whenever there are no games, the non-stadium part of it is a casino.
I mean, we'd have to look at what we consider the definition of a casino.
Yeah, I think we really, to me, that's critical because this is a little too close into, it needs a lot more analysis to understand what we're doing, that we don't have an unintended consequence of making a decision for casinos that we didn't think we were making here.
Mr. Vandenberg, looks like you've got something to add.
I'm trying to articulate this. There was a presentation to the GPFM committee several months ago, I believe it's referred to in the briefing materials. At that point, it was made pretty clear that any fixes that would allow casinos or et cetera, and they've been talking about it at the council level, that requires a legislative action. This would not allow casinos, and this is really about allowing a place where you can play lots of games. And a very small portion of that might be a card or gambling component. But really, this is about a much bigger use. If there's no bigger use, and the bigger use is the game room.
But Mr. Vandenberg, I mean, I appreciate that was said in a presentation, but once this becomes an ordinance, that's the law. And somebody that wants to operate a use that's not on this list with a casino in it, from what I just heard staff say, they really would be able to, as long as it meets the requirements of membership and so forth.
But I don't think, I think so the question is, have we defined defined casinos as, do we have a definition? We don't have a definition of casinos. So I think that again, since we went back, casinos generally aren't for private membership.
I'm using the word casinos as a placeholder for the type of activity that it would be, but without getting lost in the definition or the words, in effect, you could have a facility that is some other primary use with the equivalent of what we're referring to as a casino, but yet with some differences, but ends up being the same.
I feel like, from what I know of casinos, this definition is not going to get you there. This use is not going to get you there, because the private game club, if you look, if I'm imagining what a casino is, even if you somehow converted that into a casino for private membership, the main use is going to be, different types of gamings, axe throwing, darts, and shuffleboard, right? Things like that. And the very secondary use, the accessory use, which is only up to potentially 10% of the building, is 5%, no, 5%, is where you can do the cards, dice, and balls. So that doesn't seem like a casino to me. So if your concern is that this could ultimately get us a casino, I don't think that is going to get us there.
Okay, and respectfully, I'm not getting a lot of confidence on that. I think we're a little bit not thinking, I appreciate that you're analyzing and telling me what you're thinking as we go, but I would prefer to see something in writing that's the actual staff's analysis on this, so that if something like this goes through, it does not end up with the unintended consequence of allowing a casino. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, staff.
Any further questions from our committee? Mr. Carden.
I had a question for staff. Just to clarify on kind of some of the uses, the primary uses, axe throwing. So today there are restaurants or bars with axe throwing and so on and so forth. I assume those are classified as commercial amusement or of some sort. So with that in mind, does that mean that for the main use in private game room, all of those main uses can be used today in other uses like in commercial amusement, and only in the event that you essentially intend to have that accessory use, would you want to consider using a private game room use? Like I guess what I'm trying to get at is what are the realistic use cases where someone would consider this use and the SUP that's required along with it versus any of our existing uses?
I mean, I think, sorry, staff is just telling me that we're having sidebars. I think you could do any of those uses. It's triggering the private membership component of it. So yes, there are a lot of those that are probably defined as commercial amusement inside, but because that is public, that's defined as a public use, this other accessory use wouldn't be allowed. But you could do all of those types of gaming things if it was under private membership, and then you could also get the other piece to it.
And is this use the only way someone could do those main uses through a private membership?
Oh, is it the only way that you could get the accessory use?
The main use as a private membership.
As a private membership, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Lots of questions? I see no further questions, and so that I would contemplate a motion, perhaps. Is that a motion, Mr. Rubin? I see your hand
I'm happy
raised.
to make a motion. I move that in the matter of is it DCA 23008? Did I get the number right? I'm sorry. That we forward this on to the City Plan Commission, but with the recommendation that it not be adopted. And I'm happy to speak to the rationale if I have a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Berrien, for your second. Mr. Rubin, comments?
Sure. So this, I remember back when CPC authorized the hearing on this item, it was, for a rather simple purpose. Some folks on the commission had concerns about these poker rooms being allowed in commercial amusement without an SUP. And, I think there was rather benign intent there to introduce an SUP requirement. But it looks like, despite, best intentions, that we are operating in a legal landscape that is far more complicated than originally contemplated back in 2021 when this hearing was authorized. I would say that there are, which I think really, raises a serious question about whether we should move forward. I would say that there are really two components to this, in my view. There's a pretty straightforward public policy component that's, well within the realm of ZOAC and CPC about where this use should be allowed and whether it should be allowed with an SUP or just by right. And then there's also the very complicated legal aspect of it, about how this code amendment interfaces with state statute. And there's in fact pending litigation relating to it. And unfortunately, the way that ZOAC is constituted and the way the city code is, we are not able to go into an executive session and get really thorough legal advice to figure out, how the nuts and bolts of this code amendment interact with state law, which I think is very unfortunate and hopefully something that we could fix in the future. I'm not exactly sure how we fix it, but I don't see ZOAC as being able to accomplish all that much more other than sending it on to CPC without a recommendation that we adopt it, allow CPC to get the thorough legal advice, and allow CPC to make a call on whether and where this use should be allowed and with an SUP or not. So we have lots of important work to do here at ZOAC. We've kicked the tires on this one, but I think really the work on this one needs to be done at CPC based on the way that ZOAC is constituted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rubin. Any other comments on the motion? Mr. McGregor?
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Why not wait until the state decides what it's doing with gambling to pass this ordinance? Because this is going to change anyway when the state does, doesn't it?
So we had the request coming from CPC in 2021, but then we've also had several requests from council members that we move this forward. So it was at the request of the city council that we moved this forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barron?
Yeah, I seconded the motion because after reading all the reports and hearing everything, I don't think anything gets accomplished with this change that's not already covered in the private club definition. It seems incredibly narrow and very restrictive, so much so that you hardly understand when you could do it, and it just doesn't seem to accomplish anything to me other than what is already covered by both state law and the private club. So that's why I would, let's say, just move this on with a recommendation not to adopt.
In other words, move it on in support of the motion.
Well, yeah, if we can just say don't do it at all, not send it on at all, that's fine with me too. But if the thing is to move it on CPC to say no.
Yeah, well, that's my understanding. Mr. Rubin's motion is to move it on with a recommendation not to adopt. Correct?
That's correct. And obviously, folks can have different rationales for supporting that recommendation if they want to support it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments before we take a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Reeves?
Yes. I initially was kind of puzzled by Commissioner Rubin's motion, but you have me. I understand your rationale. And there is a big benefit to be able to have an executive session and hear the lawyers ask all the lawyers the questions. And the reason I will be supporting your motion is that you can then determine and define this better and send it back to ZOAC if there's some details to work out potentially. So that would be, CPC could send it back here with a little bit more direction. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Carden?
I don't have too much to say after Reeves said pretty much what I was going to say there anyway. Yes, I think it makes sense to send it to CPC and then go through executive session and then just have the refinement go there. I don't think there's much more precision that we can add to it at this time. So I'll be supporting the motion.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Ms. May, does that conclude our agenda for today? Okay, well, thank you for attending. Thank you, committee members. We stand adjourned at 10:06 a.m.
Thank you.